My name is Amaya, and I'm 25 years old. I still remember the day my stepfather Frank held electric clippers to my head, threatening to shave off all my hair because I dared to have a boyfriend without his permission. For 12 years, he controlled everything in my life, while constantly reminding me I wasn't his real daughter. But even as tears streamed down my face that day, something inside me finally broke free. I decided I wouldn't be his victim anymore. As I share how I finally broke free from my stepfather's control, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself, and subscribe to join me on this journey of healing and reclaiming power. Before Frank entered our lives, it was just me and my mum Laura, living in a small Midwestern town called Mapleton. Our apartment was tiny, just a 2-bedroom unit in a faded complex on the edge of town, but it was filled with love. Mum worked as a waitress at a local diner called Sunrise Cafe, often pulling double shifts to make ends meet. Despite her exhaustion, she always made time for me. Amaya, sweetie, come help me with dinner. She would call after returning home, her uniform still smelling of coffee and pancakes. Those moments in our small kitchen, me standing on a stool to reach the counter while she taught me how to make simple meals, are some of my most precious memories. Money was tight, but Mum made sure I never felt deprived. She sewed costumes for school plays, helped with science projects, and read to me every night before bed. On rare days off, we would go to the public library or have picnics in the town park. Sometimes we would gather wildflowers and make crowns, pretending we were royalty in our own little kingdom. "We don't need much to be happy, do we, Butterfly?" she would say, using her special nickname for me. Back then, her smile reached her eyes and her laugh came easily. Everything changed when I was 9 years old. Mum met Frank Donovan when he came to the Sunrise Cafe for lunch. He was a regular customer who owned a successful construction company in town. I remember the first time she mentioned him at dinner. "I met someone special today, Amaya," she said, a slight blush colouring her cheeks. "His name is Frank. He left me a really nice tip and asked if I would have coffee with him sometime." Frank was tall with broad shoulders and a confident smile. When Mum first introduced us at the diner, he shook my hand formally, like I was a little adult. "Nice to meet you, young lady," he said, his voice deep and assured. He bought me a chocolate milkshake and asked about school. I thought he seemed nice enough, though something about his smile never quite reached his eyes. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Frank would pick Mum up in his shiny black truck, bringing flowers and small gifts. He took us to restaurants I had never been to before, where the menus didn't list prices and the waiters wore ties. He seemed to know everyone in town, and people treated him with respect. "Laura, you and Amaya deserve better than struggling paycheck to paycheck." I overheard him tell my mother one evening on our porch, "I can provide for both of you." Within 6 months, Frank had proposed, and my mother accepted. The wedding was small but elegant, held in the garden of Frank's large 2-story house in the best neighbourhood in Mapleton. I was the flower girl, wearing a new dress that cost more than anything in my closet. After the honeymoon, we moved into Frank's house. My new bedroom was twice the size of my old one, with a window seat overlooking a backyard with actual apple trees. The school in this neighbourhood had newer books and computers, and for a brief moment, I believed our lives had changed for the better. "You'll have opportunities I could never give you on my own," Mum whispered as she helped me unpack. "Frank is a good man. We're going to be a real family now." But the atmosphere in the house changed almost immediately after they returned from their honeymoon. Frank's warm, attentive demeanour began to cool. The first time I ran down the hallway, excited about something at school, he stopped me with a stern look. "We don't run in this house, Amaya. This isn't some apartment where you can behave like a wild animal." At dinner, he established strict rules. No elbows on the table, no speaking unless spoken to. Plates had to be cleaned completely. The television could only be watched for approved programs. "Frank just likes things a certain way," Mum explained when I questioned the rules. "He's giving us so much. We can adjust for him, can't we?" I tried to connect with my new stepfather. I made him cards, asked about his work, and tried to be helpful around the house. But my efforts were met with indifference or criticism. "The grass needs to be cut in straight lines, not this zigzag pattern," he said when I tried to help with yard work. "If you're not going to do something right, don't bother doing it at all." I began to notice how Mum would watch Frank's face. Before speaking, how her once confident voice became softer, more hesitant. She started working at his friend's real estate office because Frank said waitressing wasn't appropriate for his wife. She would leave early in the morning and return late, leaving me alone with Frank more often than I liked. I missed my mother. I missed our small, happy home. But whenever I tried to talk to her about it, she would just say, We have to adjust, Butterfly. Frank works hard for us. This is for the best. I believed her, or at least I tried to. The first time Frank explicitly told me I wasn't his daughter was 3 months after the wedding. I had accidentally knocked over a vase while dusting the living room, one of my new chores. I'm sorry, I said quickly, already moving to clean up the mess. Frank loomed over me, his face hardening. This is why I didn't want a child, especially not someone else's mistake. I'm not your real father, and don't you forget it. The words stung like a physical slap. I froze, dustcloth in hand, unsure how to respond. Clean it up, he ordered. And from now on you call me Sir, not Frank. I'm the man of this house. That night I cried silently in my bed. When Mom came to tuck me in, I tried to tell her what happened, but she seemed distracted. Frank is just adjusting to being a parent, honey. Give him time, she said, smoothing my hair. And please try not to break things. You know how he values his possessions. As weeks turned into months, Frank's rules multiplied. I wasn't allowed to have friends over without his approval, which was rarely given. Phone calls were monitored. My clothes were scrutinized before I left the house. Those shorts are too short. Go change, get, he would command, even though they were the same length as what other girls my age wore. I won't have you looking trashy. When I turned 12, the comments about my appearance became more frequent and cutting. You're getting pudgy, he remarked at dinner, though I was actually quite thin. No dessert for you. We don't want you turning into a fat slob. My mother would look down at her plate during these comments, saying nothing. Later, she might slip me a small treat with an apologetic smile, but never in Frank's presence. Frank regularly hosted barbecues for his friends and business associates. Their children would come, and Frank would dote on them in ways he never did with me. This is Jessica, my friend Tom's daughter, he would announce proudly, his hand on the shoulder of a girl my age. She's an honor student and plays violin. Then, almost as an afterthought, he would gesture vaguely in my direction. That's Amaya Laura's daughter. The distinction was always clear. Those were children he respected. I was an obligation, a burden he had accepted as part of marrying my mother. My grades began to slip as anxiety made it difficult to concentrate. I developed stomach aches before school and had trouble sleeping. When a teacher called home concerned about the changes, she noticed Frank answered. Amaya is just being dramatic, I heard him say. You know how teenage girls are, looking for attention. When my mother questioned my falling grades, Frank interrupted. She's probably boy crazy like most girls her age. Nothing to worry about, just typical teenage rebellion. My 13th birthday fell on a Tuesday. Mum had an important closing at the real estate office and couldn't leave early, but she promised Frank would pick me up from school and take me for ice cream before she got home. I waited outside the school building for 2 hours. When I finally walked home in the rain, Frank was watching television. Why didn't you pick me up? I asked, dripping water onto the entryway tiles. He barely glanced up. Must have slipped my mind. And now you're making a mess. Clean it up before your mother gets home. There was no ice cream, no birthday cake that year. Mum brought home a cupcake from the bakery near her office and apologized for working late. Frank says I need to prove myself if I want a promotion. She explained, her eyes tired. Next year will be better, I promise. Housework became my punishment for any perceived infraction. If my room wasn't perfectly tidy, I had to clean the entire house. If I received less than an A on an assignment, I lost television privileges for a week. You live under my roof, you live by my rules, became Frank's mantra. I provide everything for you, and this is how you repay me. With mediocrity. My only escape was books and writing. I kept a journal hidden between my mattress and box spring, writing my true feelings where no one could find them. In those pages, I could be honest about my fear, my loneliness, and my growing resentment. It was the one place Frank couldn't control. One day after school, I found my journal on my bed, open to a page where I had written about hating life with Frank. My heart stopped. Had he read it? I quickly hid it in a new location inside a hollowed-out old dictionary on my bookshelf. That night at dinner, Frank was unusually pleasant, asking about school and offering seconds on mashed potatoes. But as I was about to leave the table, he said casually, "Interesting how some people write fiction about their perfect lives when they should be grateful for what they have." I froze, knowing he had found and read my private thoughts. From then on, I wrote my journal entries in a code only I could understand, using symbols instead of certain words and changing names. It wasn't sophisticated, but it gave me some sense of privacy in a house where I had none. By the time I entered high school, Frank's control had become my normal. I stopped questioning it, stopped fighting against it. It was easier to comply than to face his cold anger, or worse, his indifference. but deep inside a small flame of resistance still burned. High school should have been my chance to explore new interests and prepare for independence. Instead, it became another battleground with Frank. Every opportunity for growth or freedom was systematically blocked. When college application season began during my junior year, I brought home brochures from the guidance counselor. Frank picked them up from the kitchen table, flipping through them dismissively. "State college's art programs," he scoffed. "What a waste of money. No one makes a living with art." "But I really love painting," I said quietly. "Mrs. Winters says I have talent." Frank tossed the brochures in the trash. "Mrs. Winters isn't paying your bills, is she? You need practical skills, not fantasies." For my 17th birthday, my art teacher Ms. Rodriguez had given me a set of professional watercolors and brushes. I kept them hidden in my closet painting late at night when everyone was asleep. One afternoon, I returned from school to find my art supplies missing. "Where are my watercolors?" I asked Frank, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I threw them out," he said without looking up from his newspaper. "You were wasting too much time on that nonsense instead of helping your mother around the house." I bit my lip until I tasted blood, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Later, I found the expensive brushes broken in half in the outdoor trash can. Despite Frank's interference, I secretly applied for scholarships with Ms. Rodriguez's help, using the school's computers during lunch breaks. She was one of the few adults who seemed to notice something was wrong. "Amaya, is everything okay at home?" she asked one day after class. "You seem different lately." I almost told her everything, but fear stopped me. What if Frank found out? What if no one believed me? What if it made things worse? "I'm just stressed about college applications." I lied. Ms. Rodriguez didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. "My door is always open if you need to talk," she said, squeezing my shoulder gently. "About anything." Near the end of my senior year, Frank called a family meeting at dinner. My mother looked nervous, fidgeting with her napkin. "I've been thinking about Amaya's future," Frank announced, cutting his steak precisely. "There's no need for her to waste time and money on college right now. I need an administrative assistant at the office. She can start after graduation." I stared at him in disbelief. "But I've been applying to colleges. I might even get a scholarship." Frank's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's not happening. You'll work for me, learn a practical skill, and if you still want college after a few years, we can discuss it then. But that's not fair. I've worked hard for this." The words burst out before I could stop them. Frank's face darkened. "Fair? I've put a roof over your head for 9 years. I've fed you, clothed you, and this is the thanks I get: ingratitude and backtalk." He stood up, towering over the table. "If you don't like my rules, there's the door. See how far you get with no money and no high school diploma." I looked to my mother, silently pleading for support. She stared at her plate. "Frank is right, Amaya," she said softly. "College is expensive, and this is a good opportunity. Many girls would be grateful." By this point, my mother had become completely financially dependent on Frank. Her job at his friend's real estate office paid little, and Frank controlled all the household finances. She had slowly withdrawn from her few remaining friends, focusing entirely on pleasing Frank and keeping the peace. Frank's drinking had also become more noticeable. He would come home from work and pour himself bourbon 1 glass, becoming 2, then 3, as the evening progressed. On those nights, his criticism became sharper, more cutting, though he never became physically violent. My movements were constantly monitored. If I stayed after school for any reason, I needed Frank's approval first. The few friendships I maintained were scrutinized. "That Ashley girl seems like trouble," he would say. "I don't want you hanging around with her anymore." One by one, my social circle shrank until I was essentially isolated with only a few casual school acquaintances and no close friends. Ms. Rodriguez remained my quiet ally throughout my senior year. She would leave art supplies in my locker, recommend books that featured strong female protagonists overcoming adversity, and provide a safe space in her classroom during lunch periods. "You have a gift, Amaya," she told me once while I was working on a painting. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Your voice matters." Graduation day arrived with mixed emotions. I had managed to maintain good grades despite everything graduating with honors. As names were called and students walked across the stage, I spotted Ms. Rodriguez giving me a thumbs up from the side. My mother clapped enthusiastically from the audience, genuine pride on her face for the first time in years. After the ceremony, as families took photos and celebrated, Frank put his hand heavily on my shoulder. "Don't get too full of yourself," he said quietly. "High school is nothing. The real world starts now, and you're not prepared for it." That evening, I received an email confirming a partial scholarship to the State University's art program. It would have covered half my tuition. With trembling hands, I typed a response, declining the offer, knowing Frank would never allow it. The Monday after graduation, I started working at Frank's construction company office. Despite his title of administrative assistant, my actual role was closer to unpaid intern and personal servant. I answered phones, filed paperwork, and fetched coffee, not just for Frank, but for anyone who asked. "You need to earn your keep," Frank reminded me daily. "No one gets a free ride here." He had initially promised to pay me a small salary enough to start saving for the future, but each payday brought a new excuse. "Business is slow this month. You made too many mistakes on those invoices. I had to pay for that repair on your mother's car." What little money I did receive went into an account Frank had set up, which I later discovered he had full access to. My attempts to open a separate account were thwarted when the bank required a co-signer for someone under 21, and Frank insisted it had to be him. "What do you need your own account for, planning to run off?" he asked suspiciously. "After all I've done for you." I was trapped in a cage of financial dependence, emotional manipulation, and isolation. But somewhere deep inside, that small flame of resistance continued to burn, waiting for the right moment to grow. At 21, I had spent over a decade under Frank's control. I still lived at home, still worked for his company, and still had virtually no independence. The pattern seemed unbreakable until Jason Anderson walked into the office. Jason came to meet with Frank about contracting his company for a new apartment renovation project. In his early 30s, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence, he was different from the usual clients who came through our doors. While waiting for Frank, Jason noticed the small sketch I was working on during my lunch break. "That's really good," he said, genuinely impressed. "Are you a professional artist?" I quickly hid the drawing. "No, just a hobby." "Well, you've got serious talent," he insisted. "Have you had any formal training?" Our conversation flowed easily until Frank emerged from his office. I noticed how Frank's demeanor changed around Jason, becoming more deferential. Jason was the son of a prominent local businessman, and Frank clearly wanted the contract. Over the next few weeks, Jason visited the office frequently to discuss project details. Each time he found reasons to talk with me. He asked about my interests, actually listened to my answers, and treated me like a person with valid thoughts and feelings, something I hadn't experienced in years. One afternoon, when Frank was out of the office, Jason asked if I would like to have coffee sometime. I hesitated, knowing Frank's likely reaction, but something pushed me to accept. We arranged to meet on my lunch break the following day at a cafe a few blocks away. That coffee date led to another, and soon we were meeting whenever we could manage. Jason was the first person in years who seemed to see me, the real me, beneath the compliant exterior I'd constructed for survival. "Why do you let your stepfather talk to you like that?" he asked after witnessing Frank's belittling behavior. "The way he treats you isn't normal, Amaya." His words cracked something open inside me. For years, I'd normalized Frank's behavior, convinced myself it was just his personality, or that I somehow deserved it. Hearing someone else name it as wrong was both validating and terrifying. Our relationship deepened over several months, carefully hidden from Frank. Jason became my lifeline, a reminder that another kind of life was possible. We would meet during lunch breaks or when I claimed to be running errands for the office. He showed me what respect and kindness looked like. Then came the day Frank discovered everything. I had left my phone unattended on my desk while filing documents. When I returned, Frank was holding it, his face contorted with rage. "Who the hell is Jason?" he demanded, showing me a text message. "Are you seeing someone behind my back?" "He's just a friend," I stammered, reaching for the phone. Frank pulled it away. "Don't lie to me. These messages aren't from just a friend. You're sleeping with him, aren't you? After everything I've done for you." The office fell silent as other employees pretended not to listen. Frank's voice grew louder as he continued his tirade. "You ungrateful little slut living under my roof while sneaking around with men. What would your mother say?" I stood, frozen humiliation burning through me as Frank read aloud some of the messages Jason and I had exchanged. Private words of affection and support now twisted in Frank's angry recitation to sound tawdry and shameful. "You're 21 years old, an adult," I finally managed to say. "I can date whoever I want." Frank's face darkened to a dangerous shade of red. "Not while you live in my house, not while I pay your bills, not while you're working for my company." He grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the break room, away from the stunned onlookers. Once the door closed behind us, he released me with a rough shove. "This ends now." he hissed. You're fired. And when we get home, I'm going to shave that pretty hair of yours off. See if your boyfriend still wants you then. My blood ran cold. Frank had threatened various punishments over the years, but this was different. The gleam in his eyes held a cruelty that frightened me to my core. You can't do that, I whispered. Watch me, he sneered. Your mother will back me up. She always does. Maybe this will finally teach you some respect. That evening, I sat rigid with fear at the dinner table. Frank had informed my mother of my betrayal, his version painting me as sneaking around with multiple men, tarnishing his reputation in the business community. After dinner, Frank disappeared upstairs, returning with electric hair clippers. My mother's face paled. Frank, maybe this is too much, she said hesitantly. Stay out of this, Laura, he snapped. She needs to learn. He plugged in the clippers, the buzzing sound filling the kitchen like an angry swarm of bees. Tears streamed down my face as he approached, grabbing a handful of my long, dark hair. Please don't, I begged, hating the weakness in my voice but unable to stop it. Something in my mother finally broke. She stepped between us, her small frame somehow formidable in that moment. That's enough, Frank, she said firmly. Put those away. Frank looked genuinely shocked. You're defending her after what she's done. She's 21 years old, not 12, my mother said, though her voice shook slightly. This is too far. Frank unplugged the clippers but fixed me with a cold stare. Fine, but she's still fired and she's grounded. No phone, no internet, no car. The car I paid for with my own money, I challenged, finding courage from my mother's rear stand. Your money, you worked for me in my company. Nothing you have is truly yours, Frank retorted. Keys, now. I surrendered my car keys, my phone and my laptop that night, effectively cut off from the outside world and from Jason. Frank changed the Wi-Fi password and instructed my mother to drive me to and from town if absolutely necessary. Over the next few weeks, Frank intensified his psychological warfare. He spread rumors around town that I had been fired for stealing from the company. Several of his business associates who had known me for years now crossed the street to avoid me. He told our few neighbors that I was having emotional problems and needed space, ensuring that any attempts I made to reach out would be viewed with suspicion. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. Without work, without Jason, without any way to communicate with the outside world, I felt more isolated than ever. I spent days in my room staring at the ceiling, wondering if this would be my life forever. One evening, I overheard Frank and my mother arguing in the kitchen. I crept down the hallway to listen. She needs help, Frank, not punishment, my mother was saying. What she needs is to remember her place, Frank replied. I took her in when her real father couldn't be bothered to stick around. She should be grateful I didn't abandon her too. The words struck me like physical blows. I had never known my biological father, had never even seen a photograph. My mother told me he left before I was born, unwilling to be a parent. It was a wound I had carried my entire life, one that Frank knew exactly how to exploit. I returned to my room and lay on my bed, a strange calm replacing the despair. In that moment, I realized I had two choices: continue this half-life under Frank's control or find a way out. The small flame of resistance that had nearly been extinguished suddenly flared to life. I would escape. Somehow I would break free, or I would die trying. Freedom required planning. Without access to a phone or computer, I needed to be strategic and patient. My first priority was re-establishing contact with Jason, the only person outside this house who might be able to help me. My opportunity came when my mother needed to go grocery shopping. Usually Frank insisted I stay home, but this time I complained of a severe headache. I need some pain relievers, I moaned, holding my head. The kind from the pharmacy section, not the cheap stuff we have here. My mother looked concerned. I'll pick some up for you. No, I should come with you, I insisted. Sometimes those over-the-counter medications make me dizzy. I need to read all the labels. Frank seemed suspicious, but finally relented, likely glad to have the house to himself for an hour. At the supermarket, I told my mother I needed to use the restroom and slipped away to the pharmacy counter where they had a public phone. With shaking hands, I dialed Jason's number, which I had memorized. When he answered, I spoke quickly. It's Amaya. I don't have much time. Frank took my phone and car. I need help. Jason's voice was filled with concern. Are you okay? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I even came by your house, but Frank said you didn't want to see me. He's lying, I whispered. Listen, I can't talk long. Can you meet me at the public library tomorrow? Mum usually goes to her book club at 3. She'll drop me off to look for a book. I'll be there, Jason promised. Amaya, what he's doing isn't right. It's abusive. The word hung in the air between us. Abusive. I had never applied that label to my situation before, but hearing it spoken aloud made everything clearer. I know, I said finally. I have to go. Tomorrow at 3. The next day at the library, Jason and I huddled in a quiet corner. He looked relieved to see me, but alarmed at how thin and pale I had become. This has to stop, he said immediately. What Frank is doing is controlling and emotionally abusive. You're an adult. He can't keep you prisoner. I don't know how to leave, I admitted. I have no money, no car, nowhere to go. Jason took my hand. Let me help you understand what's happening. This is a classic abuse cycle. He isolates you, controls your finances, makes you dependent, then punishes you for any independence. It's textbook. Over the next hour, Jason and I formulated the beginnings of a plan. He gave me a prepaid phone to hide, promising to keep it active. I would need to gather important documents, save whatever money I could, and find a safe place to go when the time came. My friend Kira's mother runs a women's shelter, Jason told me. I can talk to them about your situation. They might be able to help. After I returned home that day, I began my research in earnest. The library became my sanctuary, a place where my mother would drop me off believing I was simply escaping into books. Ms. Hernandez, the head librarian, who had known me since childhood, noticed my intense interest in certain books and websites. Research for a novel, I explained when she found me reading about financial abuse and controlling relationships. Her eyes held understanding beyond my explanation. The library stays open until 8 on Thursdays, but most people clear out by 7. The computers in the back are more private if you ever need extra time. This subtle offer became invaluable. On Thursday evenings, Ms. Hernandez would allow me to use the computers after official hours, giving me precious time to research resources, legal options, and escape strategies. During those secret sessions, I discovered something shocking. While searching for information about financial autonomy, I decided to look into Frank's business practices. Using public records and business registry websites, I found discrepancies in his company filings, property transfers that didn't match reported sales, tax filings that seemed inconsistent with the company's apparent success. I wasn't an accountant or lawyer, but even to my untrained eye, something looked wrong. I printed key documents and hid them in a hollowed-out book I borrowed from the library, one Frank would never touch. Women's Empowerment in the Modern Age. Meanwhile, I reached out to Ms. Rodriguez, my former art teacher. Though I had graduated years ago, she had always told me to come to her if I needed anything. I found her email on the school website and sent a message from the library computer. Her response was immediate and supportive. We arranged to meet during one of my library visits. I always suspected something wasn't right at home, she confessed when we met. I should have pushed harder, asked more questions. You couldn't have known, I assured her. I was too afraid to tell anyone. Ms. Rodriguez helped me open a secret bank account, using her address for correspondence. She even contributed the first $100. Consider it an investment in your future, she said when I protested. You can pay me back by thriving once you're free. Over the next 3 months, I carefully executed my plan. I located and gradually removed my birth certificate, social security card, and high school diploma from the filing cabinet in Frank's office, replacing them with photocopies in case he checked. Through careful observation, I learnt the pattern of Frank's financial monitoring. He checked my mother's accounts regularly, but seemed less vigilant about certain business records. I discovered a small office petty cash fund that wasn't closely tracked, and began skimming tiny amounts, just $5 or $10 at a time, depositing them in my secret account. I reconnected with Ashley, one of the friends Frank had forced me to abandon years earlier. Her mother remembered me fondly, and after hearing a sanitized version of my situation, offered their spare room. Anytime you need it, no questions asked. Slowly, my emergency fund grew, and my documentation of Frank's questionable business practices expanded. I practiced small acts of rebellion, tiny moments of autonomy that went unnoticed. I changed my hairstyle slightly. I made minor decisions without seeking approval. I began rebuilding my sense of self beyond Frank's control. The most unexpected discovery came when my mother asked me to search for an old family recipe in the attic storage boxes. Among dusty photo albums and holiday decorations, I found a shoebox containing letters, dozens of them, addressed to my mother in unfamiliar handwriting. Curiosity overcoming me, I opened one. It was from someone named Thomas, dated shortly after I was born. Laura, please reconsider, the letter began. I know I reacted badly to the pregnancy, but I've changed. I want to be part of Amaya's life. I've been sober for 6 months now. The rehab program is working. Please don't shut me out completely. I sat in shock among the cobwebs and dust motes dancing in the attic light. My biological father hadn't abandoned us willingly. He had tried to be part of my life. Further letters revealed more. Thomas had struggled with alcohol addiction, but had sought help after learning of my mother's pregnancy. He had sent child support checks that were returned uncashed. He had begged for photographs, updates, any connection to his daughter. The last letter was dated just before my mother met Frank. I've respected your wishes for 9 years, Laura. I won't contact you again, but please know that I will always be here if Amaya ever wants to meet me. I've enclosed my permanent address and phone number. I'll never change them in case she ever comes looking. I carefully refolded the letters and returned them to their box, but not before copying down Thomas's contact information. These letters revealed a history far different from what I had been told, making me question what other manipulations might have shaped my life. As my plan solidified, I had to confront a painful reality my mother might not leave with me. Despite Frank's treatment of us both, she had become deeply enmeshed in the relationship. Her self-confidence had been systematically destroyed, her independence eliminated. What if she chooses to stay with him? I asked Jason during one of our secret meetings. That's her choice to make, he said gently. You can offer her a way out, but you can't make the decision for her. Your priority has to be your own safety. I struggled with this reality, the possibility of leaving my mother behind. But as painful as it was, I knew Jason was right. I couldn't save someone who wasn't ready to be saved, even if that someone was the person I loved most in the world. With this understanding, I finalized my exit strategy. I had saved nearly $2,000. I had secured a temporary place to stay. I had gathered all my essential documents. I had documented evidence of Frank's financial misconduct as leverage if needed. I had reconnected with supportive friends outside Frank's influence. All I needed now was the right moment to make my move. The catalyst came unexpectedly on a rainy Tuesday evening in April. Frank had been on edge for days, having lost a major construction contract to a competitor. His drinking had increased, and the atmosphere in the house was tense with his barely contained anger. When he came home that evening, soaking wet and seething, I knew something was wrong. He slammed the door, threw his keys against the wall, and headed straight for the liquor cabinet. "Frank, what happened?" my mother asked cautiously, emerging from the kitchen. "Thompson awarded the courthouse renovation to Baxter Construction," he spat, pouring a large bourbon. "After all my work on that bid, 20 years in this business, and I lose to some newcomer with half my experience." I said. My mother moved to comfort him, but he shrugged her off. "Don't. Just don't." I tried to slip upstairs unnoticed, but Frank's eyes locked onto me. "Where do you think you're going?" "Just to my room," I said quietly. "Always hiding, aren't you? Always sneaking around." Frank's words were slightly slurred, already suggesting he'd been drinking before coming home. "That's your problem. No backbone. Just like your worthless father." I should have kept walking. Any other night I would have. But something inside me had changed during my months of planning. I stopped on the stairs and turned to face him. "You don't know anything about my father," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Frank's eyebrows shot up in surprise at my defiance. "What did you just say to me?" "I said you don't know anything about my father, and you're not my father either. You've made that abundantly clear for 12 years. Frank set down his glass and moved toward the stairs. Looks like someone needs a reminder about respect in this house. My heart pounded, but I held my ground. Respect is earned. Frank's face contorted with rage. He climbed the first few steps, bringing himself eye level with me. "I've given you everything. A home, food, clothes, and this is the thanks I get, disrespect in my own house. You've given me nothing but pain," I replied, my voice shaking now. "You've controlled me, isolated me, humiliated me. You took away my car, my job, my friends. You nearly shaved my head. That's not parenting, that's abuse." The word hung in the air between us. Frank's eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. "Abuse, you ungrateful little bitch." He lurched forward, grabbing my arm. "I'll show you what real discipline looks like." He dragged me down the stairs, my feet stumbling on the steps. My mother appeared from the kitchen, her face pale with fear. "Frank, please, she didn't mean it," she pleaded. Frank ignored her, pulling me into the living room and shoving me onto the couch. "You want to talk about abuse? How about I call the police and tell them you've been stealing from my company? How would you like that?" A strange calm settled over me. This was it, the moment I had been preparing for. "Go ahead, I I said. And while you're on the phone with them, you can explain the discrepancies in your business filings. The missing funds from the Thompson project. The properties transferred to shell companies. Frank froze. What are you talking about? I've been researching Frank. Public records are fascinating. So are the company files you left unsecured on the office computer. This was a bluff, but one based on the documents I had found. You're making things up, he said, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Am I? I have copies. Documentation. Your business partners might be very interested to see it all. Or the IRS. Frank's face paled slightly. You're bluffing. Duh. I stood up slowly. Try me. You've controlled me through fear for years. That ends tonight. Frank lunged forward suddenly, his open palm connecting with my cheek in a stinging slap. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden silence of the room. My mother screamed, "Frank, stop it!" I raised my hand to my burning cheek, tears springing to my eyes, but I didn't back down. That's your answer. Violence now. We can add assault to the list. Frank raised his hand again, but my mother grabbed his arm. Stop it right now, she shouted, her voice stronger than I had heard in years. Frank whirled to face her. This is your fault. You raised her to be disrespectful. You've always been too soft on her. As they argued, I quickly moved to the hallway closet where I had hidden my emergency bag weeks earlier. I pulled it out along with my coat. Frank noticed and laughed coldly. Where do you think you're going? You have no money, no car, nowhere to go. That's where you're wrong, I said. I've been planning this for months. I have money, I have a place to stay, and I have people who actually care about me. I turned to my mother. Mum, I'm leaving. Tonight. You can come with me or stay, but I can't live like this anymore. My mother looked torn, decades of conditioning warring with maternal instinct. Frank saw her hesitation and pounced. She's lying, Laura. She has nothing. No one wants her. If she leaves, she's on her own. We won't take her back. I held out my hand to my mother. Mom, please. This isn't love. This isn't family. We deserve better. Frank's manipulative tactics shifted. After everything I've done for you both, the sacrifices I've made, Laura, you were nothing when I found you. A waitress with a kid living in a dump. I gave you everything. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You gave me things, Frank. Not love, not respect. Just things with so many strings attached, they became chains. Frank's face darkened. So that's it. After 12 years, you're choosing her over me. I'm choosing us, my mother said quietly. Both of us. Frank lunged for my bag. You're not taking anything from this house. Everything here belongs to me. I pulled the bag away. My clothes, my documents, things I bought with money I earned. They're mine, not yours. Frank's hand closed around my wrist, squeezing painfully. Nothing is yours. Nothing. In that moment, something broke free in me, years of pent-up fear and anger, crystallizing into pure determination. I looked him directly in the eyes. My life is mine, I said clearly. My future is mine, and you have no power over either anymore. I twisted free from his grip and moved toward the door, my mother following close behind. Frank blocked our path. If you walk out that door, don't ever think about coming back, he threatened. You'll have nothing. I'll make sure of it. We already have nothing here except fear, I replied. Anything else will be an improvement. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my old house key, placing it deliberately on the side table. Goodbye, Frank. Frank made one last desperate attempt, his voice suddenly pleading. Laura, think about what you're doing. Where will you go? How will you live? You need me. My mother hesitated, years of conditioning momentarily overwhelming her resolve. I held my breath, afraid she would change her mind. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her set of keys. With trembling fingers, she removed the house key from the ring and placed it beside mine. I don't need you, Frank. I never did. I just forgot how to believe in myself. She took my hand. Let's go, Amaya. Frank's face contorted with rage. You'll be back, both of you. You're nothing without me, nothing. His shouts followed us out the door into the cool night air. My hands shook as I pulled the prepaid phone from my bag and called Jason. We did it, I said when he answered. We're out, both of us. Stay where you are, he replied immediately. I'm on my way. As we waited by the curb, my mother gripped my hand tightly. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have protected you. I should have left years ago. You're here now, I said, squeezing her hand. That's what matters. Inside the house, we could hear Frank raging, the sounds of objects breaking, punctuating his shouts. We moved further down the sidewalk, rain beginning to fall gently around us. When Jason's car pulled up, illuminating us in its headlights, I felt the first real breath of freedom fill my lungs. We were leaving. We were escaping. We were reclaiming our lives. As we drove away from the house that had been our prison for 12 years, I didn't look back. I kept my eyes forward, focused on the road ahead and the new beginning that awaited us. The first weeks of freedom were both exhilarating and terrifying. Jason's friend Kira and her mother Patricia welcomed us into their home with no questions asked, giving us the guest room to share while we figured out our next steps. "Stay as long as you need," Patricia told us warmly. "I understand more than you know." The compassion in her eyes suggested her own history with similar situations, though she never pressed us for details about ours. The unconditional support was something neither my mother nor I had experienced in years. Jason was a constant presence during those early days, helping us navigate the practical aspects of our new independence. He drove us to appointments, researched resources, and provided emotional support without pushing for more in our relationship. "We have time now," he said when I thanked him for his patience. "There's no rush. Healing comes first." Frank predictably didn't accept our departure gracefully. Within days, the manipulative texts and calls began on my mother's phone, alternating between rage, self-pity, and false promises. "He says he'll change." "Shh," my mother told me one evening, her face troubled. "He wants to try counseling." After 12 years, I replied gently, "Mom, this is part of the cycle. He'll say anything to regain control." With support from Patricia, who had connections to a women's advocacy group, we filed for a temporary restraining order. The process was intimidating, requiring us to detail years of emotional and psychological abuse. But the court granted our request legally, barring Frank from contacting us or coming near us. Finding work was our next priority. Through Kira's recommendation, I secured a position at a small art gallery in town, cataloguing new acquisitions and helping with customer service. The owner, an elegant woman named Sophia, took one look at my portfolio of secret drawings and immediately saw potential. "You have a unique perspective, Chicks," she told me. "Raw talent that needs nurturing, not suppressing." My mother found administrative work at a local medical office, her years of experience at the real estate firm, qualifying her for the position despite her gap in independent employment. The salary was modest, but it was hers paid directly into her new bank account. After a month with Patricia and Kira, we found a small 2-bedroom apartment we could afford together. It was nothing like Frank's large house, with its simple furniture and plain walls, but the first night we spent there, I slept more peacefully than I had in years. "It's not much," my mother apologized as we ate dinner on folding chairs at a card table. "It's ours," I replied. "That makes it everything." Rebuilding our relationship wasn't always easy. Years of Frank's interference had created patterns of distance and unspoken resentments between us. My mother carried immense guilt for not protecting me while I harbored residual anger for her complicity in Frank's treatment. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself," she confessed one evening. "I failed you as a mother." "You were a victim too," I reminded her. "Frank isolated you, made you dependent. That's what abusers do." "But I was the adult. I should have been stronger." With encouragement from Patricia, we both began therapy separately at first, then occasionally together. Our therapist, Dr. Torres, specialized in recovery from emotional abuse and helped us understand the dynamics that had trapped us. "Recovery isn't linear," she explained during an early session. "There will be good days and bad days. The important thing is that you're both here, both free, both willing to do the work." 2 months after our escape, we received word that Frank's business partners had confronted him about financial irregularities. Anonymous documentation had been sent to them revealing years of questionable practices. Though I never admitted responsibility, the timing was no coincidence. The evidence I had gathered during my planning phase had found its purpose. With a court order and police escort, we returned to Frank's house to retrieve personal belongings we had left behind in our hasty departure. Frank was required to be absent during our visit. Walking through those rooms again, I felt a strange detachment, as though the house belonged to my past rather than my present. In my old bedroom, I recovered my hidden journal and the art supplies I had managed to conceal from Frank over the years. My mother found family photographs and keepsakes from before, Frank precious connections to our original life together. As we were leaving, I discovered my mother in the attic holding the shoebox containing Thomas's letters. "I should have told you," she said quietly. "He wasn't perfect, but he tried." I was so hurt, so afraid of being disappointed again, that I kept him away. Then Frank made sure I continued the separation. "Is he still at the same address?" I asked. The one in the last letter. She nodded. I checked once years ago. He kept his promise. Never moved, never changed his number. Maybe someday I'll contact him, I said. Not yet, but someday. With the support of Sophia from the gallery and Ms. Rodriguez, I applied to the community college's art program. My portfolio, created in secret over years of suppression, earned me a modest scholarship. I began classes that fall attending part-time while continuing to work at the gallery. My mother and I established new traditions, small celebrations of our freedom. Sunday morning coffees at a local cafe, monthly movie nights, simple pleasures that had been denied us for so long. Jason and I continued seeing each other, building a relationship based on mutual respect and support. Unlike Frank's controlling behavior, Jason encouraged my independence and celebrated my successes. I'm proud of you, he would say without adding qualifiers or conditions. You're amazing. Words like these, offered freely and honestly, began to heal years of verbal wounds inflicted by Frank. A year after our escape, Frank requested a mediation session through his attorney. After much deliberation and consultation with our therapist, we agreed to meet in a controlled environment with mediators present. Frank wanted to discuss financial matters and property division with my mother, who had never formally divorced him. Seeing Frank again was jarring. He looked older, diminished somehow, without the power he had wielded over us. His company had suffered following the revelations of financial misconduct, and his reputation in the community had been damaged. During the session, he offered what passed for an apology, though it was riddled with justifications and self-pity. I did what I thought was best, he said. I provided for you both. When it was my turn to speak, I found strength I hadn't known I possessed. What you gave us came with too high a price, I told him steadily. Control isn't care. Fear isn't respect. A cage isn't a home, even if it's made of gold. For 12 years, you told me I was worthless, that I should be grateful for the scraps of humanity you offered. But I know my worth now, and it was never determined by you. Frank couldn't meet my eyes. The mediators guided the conversation to practical matters, and by the end of the session, preliminary agreements had been reached regarding the divorce proceedings. As we left the mediation centre, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Frank no longer loomed large in my mind, no longer held power over my emotions. He was just a man flawed and damaged, who had chosen to hurt others rather than heal himself. The following week, I did something symbolic that I had been contemplating for months. I went to a salon and asked them to cut my hair, not shaved as Frank had threatened, but a stylish bob that fell just below my chin. I chose the style, the time, the place, the meaning. My hair, my choice, my terms. Looking in the mirror afterward, I hardly recognized the confident young woman staring back at me. Gone was the fearful girl who had lived in Frank's shadow. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had faced her worst fears and survived. 2 years after our escape, my mother and I have built new lives. She is dating cautiously, learning to trust again. I am thriving in my art studies with plans to transfer to a 4-year program next fall. Jason and I continue to grow together, our relationship deepening with time. The scars of Frank's abuse haven't disappeared completely. I still startle at loud noises. My mother still apologizes too quickly, too often. We both struggle sometimes with setting boundaries or speaking our minds. But we are healing. Each day brings new strength, new confidence, new joy in simple freedoms. The pain that once defined us has become just one chapter in our story, not its conclusion. If there's one lesson I've learned through this journey, it's that dignity isn't something anyone can take from you permanently. It can be buried, obscured, forgotten, but never truly destroyed. Even in your darkest moments, it remains within you, waiting to be reclaimed. Freedom, I've discovered, isn't just about escaping physical confinement. It's about liberating your mind from the prison of others' expectations and definitions. It's about recognizing your inherent worth, separate from anyone else's validation. It's about writing your own story, even when others try to dictate the narrative. My name is Amaya, and this is my story. Not the one Frank tried to write for me, but the one I chose for myself. A story of loss and recovery, of pain and healing, of captivity and ultimate freedom. If you're watching this and recognize elements of your own situation, please know you're not alone. There are people who will believe you, support you, help you find your way to freedom. Your worth is inherent. Your voice matters. Your story isn't over. Have you ever had to reclaim your power from someone who tried to diminish you? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to support others sharing their journeys of healing and empowerment. Thank you for listening, and remember, the first step to freedom is believing you deserve it.